My name's Toby Verey from the Client Access team. I'm the VLA representative talking to you today. We've also got some other members of the project team here on the right. Rikke, over there on the left, is a design engineer from Code for Australia, and Christian also is from Code for Australia. He's a software engineer. They came to us originally through a public sector innovation grant about 1.5 years ago now, and that was about 6 months of work on some related but different projects, and we're quite happy we have contracted with Code for Australia to continue their time with us now to work on Orbit. Sebastian is also here too. He's only been with us a short time, for the last month or so. He's a software engineer as well. And also just want to shout out to the ICT team who are part of the Orbit project team as well. Up the back there's Daniel and Chandima, who've been invaluable, of course, in Orbit's progress. So without much further ado, go back one step there. So why Orbit? Orbit's really overall an attempt to address what's been a vexed issue for community legal centres and VLA for a very long time, which is how to get clients into services effectively and efficiently. There are more than 500 legal services across Victoria provided by the 65 odd community legal centres, and a range of program areas and offices at VLA as well. That's counting all your duty lawyer services, all your drop-in clinics, all your appointment services of various types and workshops as well. There's also a web of eligibility questions that apply to determine if a person qualifies for any one of those services. So that might depend on the client's circumstances or their type of legal matter, where in the legal process they are in resolving that legal issue, where they live or work or study in some cases, income tests, and that'll all determine whether they get assisted by the service or not, or whether they get referred to another service. In addition, of course, some services have fairly stringent and inflexible guidelines, like VLA. Some CLCs have more flexibility with what they can do. So referrals in the sector have been a really big problem for a long time, because it's very hard when a client approaches you, either, say, at Legal Help, our phone advice, information and referral service, or at reception, say, at an office, to be able to say with any confidence what sort of services can help that client in that situation. So we're looking at tackling those issues as challenges and meeting the problems early on when the client first approaches a service, and be able to get them there right time, first time. So Orbit, in fact, is such an issue that we're addressing here, that Orbit was recognised, I guess, or encapsulated in this Access to Justice Review recommendation, which said that essentially that and Orbit goes a long way to meeting these requirements to improve referral pathways across the sector, to have, as Orbit does, an online booking system, to improve the transparency of the eligibility across the legal requirements across the legal assistance sector, and to have an online database of available services that can be accessed by service providers in the sector. So this is what Orbit is. It's an online referral, booking and information tool. It helps staff and volunteers make accurate referrals across the legal assistance sector in Victoria. So it's catalogued all of VLA's frontline services, appointments, duty lawyers and such things, the vast majority of CLC services, and also many non-legal services as well. So it has the functionality to be an aid to triage for anyone from an experienced lawyer on our legal helpline, for example, perhaps all the way through to a university student who's there for their second week, perhaps volunteering somewhere. Hopefully they can interrogate the legal matter using Orbit and figure out where to send clients appropriately. Staff and volunteers can use Orbit from a web browser that will be able to easily share information with the client based via SMS and via email. So a client can get an SMS right on the spot of a referral or email. That will be very soon accessible by a username and password once we secure the system properly. For VLA officers, it's possible to share appointment availability and to have other sections of VLA book clients directly in through a centralised calendar. So just in terms of the process, we've been working on Orbit since about February of last year. The first 3 months were characterised by a lot of user research. That's collecting information about the sector, a lot of early prototyping and testing with users. The build itself began in May last year, and by end of the July we had a working prototype tool, and in August we really had our first users on board. So since August, we've been rolling out the tool to VLA and CLCs. We've been testing and iterating on the features, and I'll talk about that process in just a moment, but developing new features and also approaching clients to figure out the ways that we can better assist them. So it is adopting a different approach to what's traditionally been done either at VLA or in the public sector generally on these sorts of projects. First and foremost, I think partly is a cross-organisational collaborative approach. So we're working with, as I say, ICT team, working with legal help, we're working with the community legal education team as well to be able to put together a product that takes advantage of all the skills and knowledge of the organisation in that space. This diagram here has been used by a lot of people, I think, for everyone who's familiar with agile methodology, but often you might start with a small version of a project to begin with, which is a sprint in a sense, and you plan and develop, test and learn in that space, and you may develop a cupcake. And along the way you can build different types, but better cakes along as you go. It's one of the things we'd like to do differently as well is to work out in the open, hence these sorts of showcases. We value the feedback, and it's important, we think, to include all our stakeholders, such as yourselves, and anyone who's interested in the loop as we go along. Everything we build is open source, which means that the source code is freely available and can be redistributed or modified. For those who know about such things, it's on GitHub, you can access it. And if you've been as I say with this diagram, it shows how we're constantly really delivering the product and putting it out in front of users. And that can be a different change management process too, because sometimes users are expecting a fully polished tool when they initially encounter it, and we're trying to encourage them to give us feedback so we can build better tools as we go along. So we're constantly working in short iterative sprints, as they know, and ensuring we're constantly evaluating the work as we go too. And essentially we're using what a fairly common term being bandied about, but user-centered design nowadays, which is to say that we're putting users in the centre of the decision-based and decisions based on their needs. So I think that's all I really need to say for that introduction. Christian is about to do a demonstration of how Orbit works.
Hello everyone. As you may know or not, you have seen, the Orbit interface, but who have seen Orbit interface already? Please raise your hand. Well, probably many of you know about it, more than I do. So let me start with this. This is our interface. This is Orbit. This is our dashboard, our main dashboard. In here you can see all the referrals that we have sent, also the bookings that we have done today, and the bookings that we have done this week, and so far the bookings this year. Also, in this interface you can create, like maybe the most important part of Orbit is the referral. So you can create the new process of refer someone, a client. And for instance, let's say that a client comes with stalking issues, and he lives in Berlin. And also let's say that he's original for this example. As you can see, up to this moment, just with the location and with the legal matter, we know that we have 100 services available for that client. But if we choose or we filter through the original eligibility of that client, we will get a little bit of filtering. Right now we have just available 57 services, and we get some questions around that client. For instance, in this case, we are asking about the court or the tribunal, if the client has already one. Let's say that we don't have one. This is a fairly new case. And this is our matching screen. At the end of 100 options or services, we ended up with 8 matches. So we have filtered all the possible services for that client in order to fit it in his situation and his location. And from that, we have from those results, we have a ranking where we can see that the legal advice appointment of criminal law in Ringwood is the most likely to help that client. So in here, you can create a booking if you know that that client is going to be helped there and met all the guidelines, and you can fill the form to book that client there with his information, if it's safe to contact, if it's safe to send SMSs, or generally if the client has a CIR number, or if you are not sure of that, you can also send an SMS, send information to the client in order to refer the client to that service, and he can start from that, visiting that office or calling that office. And we just need the client's email or the client's phone number. And for some CLCs, they will choose the referral reason of why the client was referred to that service. And after that, the client will receive an email that looks like that. Oh, sorry. That looks like that, where we send the service provider name, the service type, the address, the phone number, website if it's necessary, and more information about the service, like service details. And this is how the SMS looks like, with just barely basic information for the client, with the phone number and the address and the email address. That way the client can go there and seek help. We are implementing also a new feature, which is the booking one. We have an independent page, and we can send also e-referrals from this page. So it's not necessary for bookings. We can send also e-referrals between offices. And right now we are implementing also the no replies emails inside Orbit too. So let's talk about. Yep.
Thanks, Christian. Just to mention also that, of course, the clients can get SMS reminders and automatic reminders of bookings made through Orbit, so they can get us an SMS reminder the day before in a similar format to that one there. I'll talk about that in a moment, but essentially we're talking about a couple of improvements also, not just helping clients, but also helping staff as one of the objectives of Orbit. So we're looking at improving the way that staff can access access the tools they need to refer clients. So I won't take you through this diagram in detail. It's just to give you a visual impression really of the number of steps saved for legal help from the point a client initially contacts them, all the steps they need to complete now, as well as then contacting an office to ask them to arrange an appointment for a booking. So this is all about an appointment booking, steps involved in getting there. So that initial step for legal help can take over 15 minutes to get through all those steps. At the bottom, we're hoping to obviously significantly reduce the number of steps involved for both legal help and for the regional offices. That should take, at least legal help side, should take less than 2 minutes instead of 15 minutes or more. And we've got obviously a reduced number of steps involved at the bottom for the offices too. So there's a number of other metrics, of course, that will be hopefully significantly improving the way that the administrative burden on our staff. They'll be using one system instead of about 4 or 5, really, I think, that they currently use to do this sort of job. There'll be, we think, reduced client no-shows, so there'll be less need for repeat appointments when clients get automatic SMS reminders from the offices. And we know anecdotally, at the very least now, that the officers who are using Orbit tell us the clients are often calling to reschedule or cancel if they can't make the appointment. They get the SMS the day before and it prompts them. We've also been hopefully reducing things like incorrect referrals, of course. So we want less time spent by frontline staff dealing with understandably frustrated clients who've been referred to that organisation and they can't assist. Moving through, this is to give you an idea of the usage of Orbit at the moment. So we will very soon have a username and password login for all external users who are eligible to use Orbit. Right now it's available to CLCs and VLA users based on certain security protocols that just know where you're logging in from. But there will be other users, say non-legal service providers, might also be able to log in as well. Yeah, very soon. I'm not sure exactly off the top of my head. Isn't the date of the secure API?
We're in that process currently, so soon. Basically, less than a month, probably.
Less than a month.
Yes. Yes, they are. So essentially they're shifting out of the current system, which is Outlook calendar, and using Orbit's calendar system. That's right, yeah. So it's a migration from leaving Outlook calendar behind, really. Yeah. So these graphs just give you a bit of an indication since Orbit was started being used by Orbit users in August last year. You can see there's a bit of a spike just this year. That would be largely in referrals, is due to legal help. We rolled it out to legal help over that period. We're now, well, it's over around about 600 a week roughly from legal help users, referrals being made. Over with the bookings, that's we're rolling out likely to a number of offices, particularly, so we've got our civil justice teams, which include economic and social rights, mental health and disability, am I forgetting social inclusion have moved, they've changed their name to economic and social rights. There's Commonwealth entitlements also that I forgot the name, sorry, but there's 3 now divisions I think within economic and social rights, as well as our child support legal service, as well as our Ringwood office, as well as Criminal Melbourne for their summary crime appointments, all using the bookings aspect of Orbit. Some offices, for example, the Criminal Melbourne would really only ever use the bookings. They don't have a client-facing front-end framework really from their staff, admin, but they would say the opposite would be legal help who don't have any bookings themselves for their service. So different users have different access to the tool and they have different usage rights as well. So we can say, yes, this office can book into this service and this one can't if we want to. We can say that this office has got a special type of way. They need to have bookings prepared before they come into that office, so we can have that appear for that particular service providing office as well. So there's a lot of customization based on the user rules and permissions that we're still rolling that out. It's only just a new feature that's been added, but we're still bringing that out and adding that customization as we go. So at the moment, yeah, we have, just as an indication, the number of active users in the last week was about 127, yeah, nearly 500 odd services in Orbit. All right, so I think Rikke is going to now talk to you about user feedback. As I say, if you've got any questions, please just stick your hand up any time. So the moment the client, so I guess a service to client referral at this stage. So any, so we're sending it by SMS and email to the client directly. That's this particular version of the referrals, and that's what we call cold referrals. Any users of Orbit, any CLCs or VLA users can see all the inbound referrals coming into their organisation, as well as all the outbound referrals from their organisation too. So they can, if they need to collect stats, for example, on where we're referring people out, they can do that. If they're, and the reasons why, and also they can see what's been referred in from the sector, and they might go, hang on, this service is sending us the wrong sort of referrals. We need to log into Orbit and update our entry. We are looking, and we'll talk about this towards the end, I think, just a little bit more about the warm referrals, and that's where we pass client information between services, which will be particularly valuable for disadvantaged and vulnerable clients who need that extra support to get through to services. That's where we're moving next, but I'll let Rikke talk about the next stage.
Okay. So yeah, Toby mentioned earlier that we're taking a user-centered approach into building Orbit. So we try to spend as much time as we can with our users, just to figure and work out what they need and how they work and the context of work. So that's why beginning of this year we spent a lot of time with legal help, because there was a new big user group, and for us and before that it was mostly CLCs we've been focusing on. So now focus moved towards VLA, but still considering CLCs, of course. But of course we cannot always be there, so we do have different channels for feedback as well. Just a chat function, an email, and different ways for users to get in contact with us when something comes to mind or if an issue is there. So we got a lot of feedback from our users, and overall it seems like they're quite positive and they see potential in the tool, which is nice. And some of the things that we learned is that they find it useful, it's easy and intuitive to use, and they like that it's easy to share the referral and share information with clients. And also the fact that it takes the guessing out of making referrals, and that it provides you with alternative referral options that you might not have thought of in the beginning of the search. So we know we're on the right track at addressing some of the challenges that our users they meet. And as nice as it is to get some positive feedback, it's the things that concerns our users and the things that are not working that well that will tell us where to move next. So that's really important for us too. And some of the more specific things that we learned from our rollout so far is that sometimes it's a bit hard for users to just place a legal matter within our taxonomy. So we build our taxonomy based on how CLCs and VLA categorize legal matters. So we try to combine them. So of course we have our own version, but it's an ongoing thing. So we're constantly adding and splitting legal matters up and sometimes combining them and then adding follow-up questions just to make it work for everyone. And the same with the location search. For some, it's a bit tricky because if you type in Ringwood, for example, it gives you 4 options. But if you type in Geelong, because the way we are filtering, it searches both on council and suburbs. So because Geelong is a big council, it will give you more than 50 options to choose from. So these small things that can be a bit tricky and just make that the user is they're not totally sure what to do. So we're looking into those things. So those are the more specific things, but there's also some more high-level challenges that we need to deal with. And some of them being trust in the matches, because sometimes Orbit comes up with matches that the user didn't expect, or it can be a new service comes up and they want to learn why that is. So we need Orbit to provide that feedback to the user, but also sometimes some services don't show up, and there can be different reasons for that. But it just means that, I don't know, sometimes the users just don't trust the results, and then they can get in contact with us and we follow up or we give them an explanation on why that is. But we have also created so that they can actually go in and filter through all the services and see the information that are in the different services, so they can try and trace back and see why a match is showing or not, if that makes sense. And another thing that we want to look into is how we better guide and support our users. It's more because now you make a search and then it gives you a range of matches, and those are matches that the client may, that's an option for the client, but not all of them may be the best option for the client. So we're trying to learn, is it better to just share all the matches, or would some be better than others? And we're not sure what is the right answer, but we want to look into how we better support our users to making that decision. Yeah. And that's a really good comment because we heard that a lot from users too. It's like if you have someone who's homeless, and there's not necessarily a legal issue per se, it's more like I need housing, and they don't want to go through the whole thing because they know what they're looking for. So something we are looking into is whether we need a quick referral thing, where there's a list where you just choose based on different situations or scenarios, or bundle up categories of things. That's true. That could be an option. So yeah, so we're thinking of doing something like that, like a quick search. But the only thing is for the legal services, you want to make sure that they actually are within the catchment. But yeah.
The catchment information, I mean, that's what's really important, because when you're looking across Victoria, it's just about knowing what services are in each particular area. So
Yeah.
we've got to know what's in Shepparton, what's in Geelong. So the catchment information,
Yeah.
to get that right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Good. No, but that's a good, and it's an important comment and something we heard from a lot of users. Yeah. And which sort of brings me to my next point too, with the usage. That some users, they are super quick at adjusting to a new tool. They just take it on and start using it. And others, they're a bit more, oh, this is a new tool, it's a new way of working. But also for common referrals, like referrals or matters or situations where they know where to send clients. They don't want to go through all of this because they know the phone number, they know where they should contact. And which is fine that they can share that. But they might miss out on some alternative referral options because we don't really cater for that need in Orbit yet. So yeah, good point. But in general, we are getting a lot of feedback, which is good because it means that our users are committed to Orbit and they're committing to helping us build this tool and they take ownership. So that's really great and something we appreciate. Yeah. Oh, that's good. But but keep everything. All the feedback is good and valuable for us. Are there any more comments on the user feedback? Okay, because else I'm just going to move on to feedback from the clients because we're building this tool for the users, for this legal staff to use, but essentially we're building it to better assist clients in getting help with their legal matters. So since the last showcase, we've been reaching out to clients in order to better understand their needs because we felt like we were kind of lacking that aspect. We needed to focus more on that. So we did some interviews for clients waiting for appointments, and we went down to Magistrates Court as well. And we asked them how they got to that service or if they got any help getting to the service. And the common thing was that most clients, they didn't really recall their full journey there. It seemed like there's a lot of touch points for them. So there was both like the police, legal services, maybe different legal services, and also friends and family giving them all this advice and information on what to do. So it's difficult for them to just filter through and actually figuring out the right ones to act on, but also remembering where they actually were told to go and who told them to do what. And some of the factors that we identified that brought a more poor experience was around the uncertainty and also the information overload for clients. So not knowing what to do and not knowing the potential implication of what's happening was something that a lot of them, they described as being stressful and worrying for them. But on the other end, adding to a positive experience includes feeling supported. And something a lot of them mentioned before their appointments were getting reminders on where to be, just getting a phone number of a person to contact in case something slips their mind or they just want to follow up on something. It just made them feel more supported and felt like there was someone in the other end looking after them. And then knowing next steps. And knowing next steps meaning both all the practical things, like you need to be here, you need to do this and this and this, but also mentally preparing for what's coming up and what's about to happen and the different outcomes of the whole situation. So that's more general feedback, but we're also chasing up clients to talk to them, to talk to clients who've been referred through Orbit. So we started sending out an email survey to clients who received referrals, and we got some response already, but not enough to draw any conclusions. So around half they reacted on their referrals and said it was extremely useful. So that's good, but we don't have enough to actually paint a picture on whether Orbit is doing the right thing yet or not. So we'll get back to that. But any questions around the client feedback? Only around 10 so far. We sent it out last week. But yeah, so we haven't sent out through SMS yet. Most clients, they receive referrals via SMS and not email, but we're still figuring out the right way to do this because we are sending referrals out from one number, and we tried it before, and when we send out the survey from another number, people get confused and they don't remember, or they think, who's asking this? It doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, so we still need more people to get back to us. So yeah, what's next? We have all these new features that we want to introduce or put into production. The no reply emails, they're almost ready. And the thing is, we want to make it ready both for VLA and CLCs, and we need different, signatures for the different ones. So there's some tech things we need to figure out, and then also warm referrals or e-referrals as they are known within VLA. Yeah, no reply email is information email. If that makes more sense. But it's basically sharing basic information that's not specific to their situation, but specific to the matter with the client.
And they still may include some links to a video or represent yourself.
Yeah. So we're getting some help with that as well, to look at the content and make sure the formatting is the same in all the emails. But we have them in there, and we have the emails that women's are using as well. So we need to make sure whether we want to make everything available for everyone or only for their own office. But that's, again, it's up to the different offices what they want to share with others. And then the e-referrals as well. So we're trialing out making the e-referrals internally at VLA, but essentially we want to include the CLCs as well, so that the different offices can set up these arrangements with each other, so they can send e-referrals for more vulnerable clients to each other. And then the question before about making Orbit public, that's something Sebastian, Christian, Daniel, Tendima, and Nathan are working on right now, so that everyone can log in once they have a password and a username. And then we're working on the admin screens, so that offices can take over the maintenance of their services themselves. So yeah, Fitzroy, they already created their own services in Orbit, but we're like all the different functions. We need to make them more intuitive for users to do it themselves and make it available for them as well. And then there's some other things with visualizing keyword searches for when you try and find the right legal matter. And then, of course, a lot of testing and observing and interviewing clients and users, because that's an ongoing thing. We already have some non-legal referrals in there, but we're constantly improving and adding more. But it's also for us knowing what to include. That's why having Fitzroy adding their own new service, we're just testing that out and see if that's intuitive for them. And then we can open it up and have other services adding more local services, especially, because that's the issue. We don't know what's local in Shepperton and what's useful for them. So that too.
There's a form to fill in, isn't there?
There's a form, yeah. But it's to make sure that we just keep an eye on what's happening as well. But we have admin users that can create them directly into Orbit as well, but only under their own service provider for now. But yeah, there's a form, yeah. And you're more than welcome to use it.
Yes, we're about to send you all on link.
Oh, that's great. Perfect. So with the ranking, if there's a catchment, it ranks higher. And if there's a follow-up question or eligibility criteria, like we have a point system, so you get more and more points if there are any criteria for getting into that service. And then if those questions are ticked or answered, they get ranked higher. But the issue you're talking about, people referring to themselves. So that's something that they solve with rules. So it's just adding more complexity, so that you can go into each service and then you can actually control now who can make bookings, who can make referrals. So default, everyone can make a referral to a service, but now you can actually go in and say, okay, I don't want legal help to make referrals to me. I don't want Mooney Valley to make referrals to me, or if for any reason, but we encourage people to open it up, of course, but there could be different reasons for that, especially with the warm referrals. I know women's, they have different agreements with different offices, so they can control it that way. Yeah, so that's why we did the survey, the email survey to clients, and we didn't get that many responses yet, but out of the ones that followed up, they all said it was extremely useful, and it was like one third, and then another third they're still considering, but still said that the referrals were useful. So we have that, but we're still waiting to get to the point where we can actually track a client through the whole journey through and see if they actually get to a service and actually get into that service. So that's the data we're trying to capture. But yeah, so we send out the survey, but we also said that you can win a gift certificate if you answer the survey. So like you never know if they are just a bit more positive if you say that they can win something. But yeah, that's where we're at now. I think the trial is probably gonna be with warm referrals, and then we can start tracking that. But else, yeah, it's the referral ID, and then the only thing we capture now is the contact details of clients. So we would have to see if there's some repeating email addresses or phone numbers. But yeah, it's not decided yet. But it would be good, yeah. Yeah, at the moment we are customizing the different forms, and you can choose between 5 different forms. But again, we're working on a new layout for that to make it easier to put in that information. But again, that's VLA internally, so they know the users who are using these forms, the legal help staff, they would know the guidelines for when it's appropriate to send a client in. But we are asking for the right information that they want to know. But for between CLCs, it might be only for specific matters or clients with specific income. So that one's going to be a bit more tricky. And there has to be some filtering saying no, yes, in or out. Because you have the ID number when it's warm. And when it's a warm referrals, it's more on the service providers than it is on the clients. So it should be possible to track more, I'm assuming. Yeah, no, not at the moment. No, but that's a good idea too. Yeah.
But we do think that users certainly would be encouraged to, if they're getting wrong referrals, to amend their service in Orbit appropriately. So especially outside of VLA, I think CLCs would just work differently to the way we work. And understand we're obviously very standardised within VLA, but certainly CLCs can modify their entries. So that's what the admin screens we're looking at. They might be able to do that. So. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'd have to
No,
look at it.
I don't think it is, no. But that could be another one we could add.
Yeah, we certainly add that,
Yeah. Nope.
All right. Well, okay.
Okay. Well.
Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thank you.